Okay, so I think one of the key things that I think is really important is you brought up the idea of there's a difference between vacation travel and exploration travel. And I wanted to think, or I wanted to see your opinion on that. Like, what do you think that difference in vacationing versus exploration?
Sure, sure. And we've talked about this, you and I, a couple times before. And so I think what happens is you get individuals who are looking to travel specifically to kind of get away and just relax. Okay. And they're not really looking into what they're gaining educationally, try to understand culturally. So I'll kind of put this individual in a kind of a Mexico all-inclusive type area where they're going to a hotel and they're just kind of hanging out and enjoying themselves. And I think that's a great way to also experience another country. But I think there's the other side that individuals, there's a lot more effort. There's a lot more that the individual wants to know about the country. They may want to know about the customs, the culture, the language, really understand architectural design. And they'll prep themselves by reading up a lot about the country, the city. Okay. And so, what that is, that's an educational awareness that they're wanting. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not going to be relaxed. I mean, it's going to be enjoyable, but there's probably a lot more effort personally that they're going to put into that way of vacationing than another way where they just kind of want to kind of maybe get off the grid and just relax and just maybe have someone pamper them.
I think one of the key things that you bring up is when you're exploring, sometimes you're going to be uncomfortable, and that uncomfortableness is a good thing. And I know when you're vacationing, when you're relaxing, you don't really want to be uncomfortable. So you might go to very familiar areas, and it could be very appealing to do that. But I think it's really important with exploring and like genuinely engaging while you're traveling, um, to do that.
Yeah, yeah. You make a really good point. And this is one of the reasons why sometimes people don't travel overseas, is that they think they're going to feel too uncomfortable. One of the questions that's often asked of me is whether or not people speak English. And most of the places I go, they do.
Mhm.
Again, how am I going to get around if I'm not around individuals who, speak the language that I know? So there's that. And then what happens is if I'm going to go into an environment that doesn't speak English, then maybe I'll be with a tour guide. I'll be with a group of individuals or a local person. And that's one of the great things about today that many years ago you didn't have. You can go onto some of these apps and you can find a friend, you can find an individual who will show you around for almost pennies on the dollar. They're just local people. They might be young, they might be middle aged, they might be older people. You can kind of pick and choose what kind of individual that you want to show you around a town, a city. You have to be a little careful, but again, a lot of these apps actually vet the individual. So, this idea of feeling uncomfortable, I think that's kind of a good thing too, because again, you're learning from it. But also, we're in an environment where most countries, and especially obviously, if you haven't traveled too much, you're going to want to go to maybe one of the Western countries. We live in Florida, maybe South America. Go to a place that they've had a number of tourists and everything else. Don't go too far off an environment where a lot of the locals wouldn't want you to go to, wherever that might be. But yeah, for the most part, people find out that once they try it the first time, that they really enjoy it, and they really find that it's not as difficult as they thought that it would be. So I think that you bring up that point of being uncomfortable, there's no doubt that having that feeling. But I think when we're learning, we are uncomfortable, right? It's something that we don't know, and then once we say, "Wow, that wasn't too bad," I think I want to do this again. So that's that area, and of course, that's part of that learning characteristic.
I think that's a good, like a common reason or a common, yeah, it's a common reason why I got recommended a lot throughout my college education from many of my professors, including you, um, to get a passport while you're young and travel because it's so important for expanding your perspective and kind of getting a different experience. And I think that's kind of key with that exploration instead of vacationing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And when we've been talking about this, it's I see traveling almost as a class in itself. So if I'm going to let's say Colombia and I'm going to go to Bogota, that's going to be a class for me. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to research a little bit about Bogota, the environment, the people, the culture, the food, the language, Spanish, the religion. And then when I go there, I've got some really cool background about it, and then I get to really understand versus just going there and then not being sure why they do the certain things that they do. And so right there, that's that almost that class in not just in travel, but of that particular country and that particular city and that environment with those people.
And that's something I really love is like that research aspect of it. It really does allow you to not only like you get that book education wise, but then immersing yourself and genuinely actually seeing how it is. So you get that lived experience is so important.
Yeah, yeah. And of course the next thing that we have to consider is cost, right? And generally sometimes people who are traveling for the first time, younger people especially, they don't have a whole lot of money. So the first thing that you really want to do is you want to determine how much money you have that you want to spend on your trip. So, and that's all inclusive, right? It's the fact that, how much is it going to cost me to fly where I'm going to go? How much is it going to cost me for transportation while I'm there? And how much spending money do I want? And really, you really want to try to keep within that budget. Um, I'm trying to think of what would be a good budget as we sit here, and
It's hard. I think saving for it and definitely putting aside what you can. Obviously, you want to save in general, but for me, I kind of put aside if I think I'm going to come up with like a trip. I try to get a gauge of how much it's going to cost. I'm interested in what are some kind of tips that you've come across, like for getting affordable flights? Because I know for me, when I look at flights, I want to go to areas like Europe. I've looked at flights for Japan, flights for China. Those are really expensive flights. So those are kind of the ones that a lot of times it may interest people to travel, but then they look at the price and they're like, that's unattainable.
Sure. And again, it depends on where you are and how much money you have. Um, so we're here in the United States, and the closest countries, especially to Florida, is South America, and obviously those flights are going to be fairly inexpensive compared to flying to Europe or flying to Asia, and then also the hotels are going to be a lot more reasonable too. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't fly to Europe and stay at a hotel or maybe a hostel in Europe. That's one of the great things about my European counterparts is that they will stay in hostels. And so the greatest cost is going to be that flight. And you can find good fares. It's just a matter of trying to understand a little bit more about the country too, and trying to understand where what time of the year you're wanting to fly. Flying to Europe in the summer is incredibly expensive. Flying in mid fall is not too bad. That's actually a time where the I find that the prices are lower than when you get closer to December and the Christmas and New Year's. Boom, that those holiday season times start to go up again, and then February, March time they kind of come down, and then
So
right
kind
around
of similar
April,
to
then
the way ours works, because I know during the holiday times it gets really, really bad. It's gonna cost a lot more trying to travel around the holidays because everyone's traveling around the holidays.
yeah, yeah, and of course summer, because schools are out and everything else, and people are taking their kids out for vacation. So yeah, if there's a way that you can adjust your schedule so that you can fly during those off-peak times, then you're going to get a better rate and everything else. And of course, look at what the cost is for hotels and look for hostels. Those are those environments that sometimes again, back to where you're going, you can actually get some really nice hotels at really inexpensive prices if you're at those particular time zones and time areas of the year. The other thing too is if you get a place just outside of the city, and this is something that there's no doubt a lot of people want to be in the city,
Mhm.
and that's a good thing for cost because you don't have to pay for transportation coming into the city if you've got a hotel just outside. But understand that in most other countries, public transportation will bring you into the city, so it's not going to be as costly as it is for us in the United States, where you might have to rent a car because you don't have public transportation. You can get a hotel room about 3 or 4 miles outside of the city, and it can really reduce your cost on your hotel rate, and it might be a dollar or two every day just to get into the city and a dollar or two to come back. So again, you're able to you're able to save money that way. So that's a function that you should be thinking about.
I think public transportation is an easy one to forget, especially being from the US. I had a little bit of experience with foreign public transportation because my family lived in Germany for a little while. We lived on a base, but whenever we went off base, I remember we almost constantly the first couple maybe year that we were there, we didn't have a car, but we used to take buses, we would take trains. I remember once taking a train out to this gorgeous castle. And the train ride itself was kind of a treat because you could literally see like the German countryside. You could see the mountains. It was gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah. And I just think to myself as you're mentioning this, I think to myself how my European and certainly South American and Asian friends are thinking right now because they're so used to all of this to be thinking that this is something you actually have to think about
Mhm.
is they don't. I mean, because they're so used to using public transportation, even if you're going to another country, you understand that how public transportation works. So it's just a matter of just understanding how to connect. That's all you have to do.
Mhm.
Whereas I remember when I bring students from the United States, they just have never navigated public transportation. So again, it seems like a pretty scary thing, but once you do it just for a couple of days, the students just absolutely love it. They love, oh my God, I got on a bus and I got on a train and I
I
went on the
know.
underground and then I walked for a little bit and I got back on the train and I got on a tram and just the idea of navigating that is great. They just thoroughly enjoy it.
And I think one of the things that you talked about earlier that would really help with that intimidation is getting someone that is a local guide. And like you said, it is a lot more affordable, but a local guide's going to obviously have a lot more information about local public transportation. So they're able to guide you through the process and make it less intimidating.
That's right, absolutely. And and that's what you always want on your first couple of times that you travel. You want to make sure that you're if part of the learning process is what you want, then you certainly do that. But you want to be as comfortable as possible so that the experience is good, so that you want to go ahead and do it again. That's the key. You know, if it's so difficult and arduous and you really don't understand, and you know it might be harder to travel again.
I think not setting yourself up for failure is a good thing because then you're gonna like you said, you're gonna have a great time and you're gonna want to do the process again. Because it for me, it would be very intimidating the idea of trying to figure out uh a new public transportation system. Like I see a lot of times people showing the Japanese metro system, and there it's I could imagine like already having the language barrier, but they have a very complex and large train system, if I'm not mistaken. So I could imagine getting lost so easily there.
Yeah, again, to you it seems large, and but of course it's because it spans a lot of area, and you know they're able to get to where they need to. It works very, very well for them.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, good. So I think what we'd like to do is maybe talk a little bit about money, okay, and not so much how much that we allocate, but how to navigate money, because what happens is you've got your American dollars, and what you want to do is you want to get the most for your American dollars, right? So one of the things that I teach business, and I like my students to understand exchange rates, and value. So in other words, you know what the value of your dollar is, and so what you want to do is you want to compare it to the exchange rate to the particular value of the whether you're in Japan and it's the yen, or whether you're in Europe and it's the euro, or whatever country you're looking at their particular currency. And what you want to do is you really want to not only look and see what the exchange rate is, and so how many dollars to how many euros, but then you also want to see is what does a euro buy? So how many euros does it cost to buy a can of Coke? How many euros does it cost to have an average dinner, depending on the city that you're going to be in, right? If you're going to be in a major city like Paris or Brussels, then you know it might be slightly. Obviously, it'll be more. If you're going to be out just outside, might be a little bit less. But you really want to understand how the money works, because you don't want to get yourself into a situation, which this happens a lot, where people are so excited that they're in a particular environment that they just spend. They just go ahead and oh yeah, I'll pay. How much is it? Okay, I'll just pay.
Mhm.
And before they know it, they've gone through so much money. This is something that I always try to control my students on. You need to almost put yourself on a daily budget, more so than you have to do in your regular life,
Mhm.
because you're excited about being in a different country, and the last thing you want to do is restrict yourself.
Mhm.
But by restricting yourself and understanding, it actually makes the process a lot better. So again, recognizing what the value to our currency is to the currency that you're going to be going and exchanging, and then recognizing what that exchange can buy. And what you can do is there's a lot of apps, of course, that already do this for you. But I'm kind of old school. So what I might do is I might, print it out and take scissors, cut it out and put it in my wallet so I can just kind of like look at it instead of necessarily always going to my phone. But it doesn't matter. I mean, if you're used to using your phone and everything else, you just go ahead and do that. I just like to have something that gives me, what's the value of $1, $5, $10, $20, $100. So this way, when I see something, automatically, I know what that is. But I think that is really important for an individual looking to travel and allocating that's the total package of the cost so that they don't come back. You come back from vacation and suddenly you've got another $1,000 that you weren't expecting to pay, and now your vacation costs twice as much or whatever or a third more. So we want to make sure that we keep that in check.
I think again it's that kind of planning ahead that helps. And like you said, you don't have to restrict yourself. I think if you're able to, do that research ahead of time, you can set aside an amount of money for yourself where you're like, when I'm out, I know I'm going to want to buy something like a trinket maybe, or I might see something that interests me. So I'll put aside a certain amount of money. So I'm like, okay, this is how much I can buy cute little trinkets with. After that, no more. So you're still able to kind of give yourself that, because I think that is something that it is very easy to get caught up in is you're out and you see something and you want to purchase it or experience it. And it's very easy to overextend yourself.
Yeah, yeah, and again, especially first-time travelers traveling overseas, I have to be specific about that. Is when we travel, we like to bring something back to our family and friends because we're thinking about them. And again, that can be a lot of money too. Every time you go someplace and you buy a T-shirt or a hat, or you talk about trinkets, whatever it might be. So you've got to be very careful. I tell a lot of my students that your family and friends want you to have a good time, and sure they want you to be thinking about them, but a key is to maybe just a magnet
Hmm.
is nice enough. Okay, coasters. That's one of the things that I always bring back to family and friends. It's a coaster, and they can put it on their desk and put it on a
Hmm.
table, whatever. And sometimes a magnet. It just again, unless you've got a fair amount of money. Be careful on that. And the other thing too is you don't want to spend your whole time in stores. You want to spend your time experience the environment with the locals. That's what you want
Hmm.
to do.
Well, I imagine for me, I would probably spend a lot of money on food, especially street food.
Yes, yes, yes. Um, Food. Okay, so this is one of those that I've had to pull my students away from because what will happen sometimes is we'll go to these major European or Asian cities, and of course, strangely enough, Burger King will be there, McDonald's will be there, the Pizza Hut will be there, and sometimes they just want to go straight to what they're used to, their comfort zone, their comfort food. And I got to pull them away from that. I said, come on now. Now, some of them, of course, that's not all of them. Some of them, they're excited about trying
Mhm.
local foods and everything else. But yeah, I think that's important. Again, it's part of their culture, right? And so recognizing and again, going to environments that may not cost a lot. That might be what the locals are eating. That's really a lot of where you want to go. You almost want to stay away from some of these restaurants that cater specifically to tourists because they recognize what the palate of the tourist, and so they're catering to that. You don't want that. You want to
An
visit.
authentic experience.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And so, you want to make sure that you do that. And again, kind of going back to just asking people. Don't be afraid to you find someone, we've done it, and I've told students to do it. You're standing at a bus stop and do you speak English? Yeah. Oh, where's a good place to eat around here? And it's just a neat little way of having an interactive experience with a local, and maybe they can give you some really good advice.
No, that's a great idea to be able to ask someone like, hey, what is a local spot you like to eat? So you're literally getting an authentic experience.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, yeah, so that's where a lot of that, depending on how adventurous you are, again, work your way into really maybe exotic foods. Maybe you don't want to start off with that, but there's no doubt that. Um, I was in China. I remember they had squid out on, out in the, wasn't on ice or anything else. The squid was in, fair, outside ambient temperature and everything else. And I'm
Mhm.
thinking, oh my gosh, I don't tend to eat anything like this that wouldn't be on ice, but everybody else was doing it. And I must admit I didn't. But I had some students who tried it and they were pretty happy with it. So, but work your way into things like that. Yeah. Good. And what are some of the things that we want to think about when we travel? One of the things I think is what do we do? What are some of the things that we're going to do that we're really wanting to experience? And depending on what your interest is, your interest might be architectural design. So you're going to walk around the city. You're going to try to understand the architectural differences between your country or your city where you are and that country. And like a little bit when I was talking at the beginning, doing a little bit of research. There's that aspect to it. Some people might like the idea of museums. I love to go into museums, the different types of museums, whether it's modern art, whether it's some other type of art, whether it's artifacts from their history. It might be a science museum. I mean, any type of museum, but different environments. That's where you really get to understand a lot of the culture and their history from the museums that represent their history.
One question I have for you is, do you find any value of going to kind of those large, I would say, I don't want to say tourist traps, but like, because I wouldn't call like the Eiffel Tower a tourist trap, but like these big areas that may be really common. One of the things that I kind of feel like is they're so overpopulated and there's so many people that it feels like you're not really getting an authentic experience, or it may not be as fun of an experience as you'd expect.
Um, it's a great question. Uh, there's a reason why Paris is the number one place where people want to go. They want to go to the Eiffel Tower. When
Mhm.
people go to London, they want to go to Big Ben. There are these places that people do want to go. So I don't want to exclude them completely, but there's no doubt, even though these buildings, okay, represent, and of course, these capital cities represent the whole country. It's a representation, right? It's the reason why it's the capital city. It's a representation, and that's what people in that from that particular country are known for. That those buildings represent that particular country. So standing next to the Eiffel Tower, or the Great Wall in China, of course, there's going to be millions of people, tens of thousands when you're walking around there and everything else. So there's no doubt that you'll be able to experience what that is, but you are absolutely correct. That's a different feeling from being outside of the city in a village or in a town or in a small city among local people with not so many tourists.
Mhm.
And having a conversation or just watching how they're interacting with each other. Because what happens is when you're in a major city, you're seeing how tourists interact with locals, how tourists are the majority of the group of people, right? Whereas if you come off the major environments and you're in the smaller towns and cities, now the majority are going to be locals. And so then you can really experience how that is. And again, people traveling for the first time that might be too far off the beaten path. They
Hmm.
may want to stay, in the city first. If you go to Spain and you're in Barcelona, maybe that's it. You'll spend a week in Barcelona or 5 days in Barcelona, and the next time that you want to come back to Spain or whatever, you'll go out and you'll visit some of the other smaller cities. And you're right, it will be a different experience for sure. Yeah. Um, Good. Um, and so, in talking a little bit about um, how about the whole phone system? One of the things that we want to make sure is that we're not always roaming, and a lot of our phone systems do not are not going to give us an endless amount of data for our travel when we're abroad. So one of the things that we want to make sure that we do, because it's the modern way of doing things, and that is making sure there's Wi-Fi around, right? Wi-Fi, free Wi-Fi, whether it's at your hotel, whether it's at a restaurant, that's where we want to, or if you're, there might be even some public environments that have free Wi-Fi, and um, and that's the time you want to go ahead and maybe do some of your checking out, looking for certain things, making a phone call to family or friends overseas, using the WhatsApp app. Uh, and That's the best thing that you can do instead of when you're in the United States, you just pick up your cell, just make a call. You don't worry about it. Just about all of us have, fully inclusive phones and everything else and programs. But when you go overseas, there's going to be some cost associated with that. So you want to make sure that you use Wi-Fi as much as possible. The other thing too is you want to make sure that um, whatever type of service you have. And most of our services work, but not all. Some inexpensive phone plans that individuals have may not have. You're going to be roaming the whole entire time that you're overseas. So you definitely want to connect with your provider and find out whether or not sometimes you can pay for a package, $10 extra a week, or maybe $50 for the month, whatever it might be, and then they give you a certain amount of data that you're free to use. But you should really think about that. That's something worth thinking about too. Are there any other questions that you have? I think as I'm looking at this, I was just thinking one of the questions that you had mentioned was airlines, and did I use any particular type of travel app or some kind of
Mhm.
website? I don't tend to do that. I kind of stick with some of the bigger ones, whether it's Travelocity, whether it's Priceline. But there are, you can look at Google Flights. There are a bunch of different mechanisms to see what cheap flights might be out there and everything else. So I would certainly recommend that. I don't have anything right off the top of my head here, but I would definitely look at some of those. I think you're probably looking at mm, probably about 50 to 100, maybe $150 difference, and for a flight. And of course, that can go a long way. That can help you with 3 days in a hotel or something like that. So,
Hmm.
so it helps out with that. Um, let's see. Kind of going back a little bit to the language. I know I'd mentioned it a little bit in recognizing language. One of the things that I like to share with my students is, as much as possible, try to learn a couple of phrases in that language. If you're going to France, at least say bonjour. If of course, if you're going to a Spanish country, hola, ¿cómo estás?
Hmm.
How are you? And that kind of diffuses a little bit of the um, barrier that you might have with.
What would be some common phrases that you found really useful that you wouldn't expect? Because I know you have a lot of lived experience of actually using, because it could be easy to just think, okay, I need hello, probably where's the bathroom? Thank you. I would imagine sorry is a really good one. Um,
Well,
help.
Well, I don't have too many. There's the one, depending on the country, is sorry I don't speak, and then fill
Hmm.
in the so after you might say hello, you also might say sorry I don't speak French, or I don't speak Spanish, or I don't speak Japanese, or I don't speak
Hmm.
Chinese. And and by saying sorry that you don't, that automatically they'll say, oh, well, that's okay. And then they'll go into their English. Whereas if you just go up to someone and say, hey, I speak English, that's a little rough. And
Hmm.
to me, that's one that right out the gate diffuses, and you'll get a smile from someone generally
Hmm.
if you say that.
It gives a lot of context for the person you're talking to.
Sure, sure. They obviously understand that you don't know that. Generally, with me, is if I don't say anything, I don't know. I seem to have this kind of international look, it seems, that whenever I go someplace, if I don't say anything, they will give me the menu in their native. Of course, they would do that. And maybe that's with most people, who knows? But maybe the way that I'm dressed, who knows? But yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Can I have one in English? Can I have a menu in English? And pardon. That seems to be people understand that around the world. So yeah, yeah, that's always helpful. It's always helpful. Again, I think more so than anything else, many, many years ago, the Americans would have this reputation overseas of being kind of loud, and all you do is hear the sound of the American. People are quieter and everything else. I think we're changing that a little bit. I think Americans are recognizing that you have to be a little bit more humble towards that particular country, and when in Rome, right, do as the Romans. And so I think that we're recognizing that more and more, and that is something definitely worth thinking about when traveling. So anything else that you think that we may not have? Seems like we really covered a fair amount today, Alicia.
Yeah, I think one of the things to kind of follow back around on is kind of what you're gaining out of travel, because that is something that I think spurs a lot of people to travel in the first place.
Yeah, yeah. Sure, and as you say, just like we were talking about at the beginning, was that traveling is just it's a rich experience. It's not only a rich experience because you're understanding what's going on in the other cultures and the other countries with these individuals, but what it happens is it gives you a perspective and why you do the things that you do. And
Mhm.
so you're able to learn what another country does, and then you can question. which I just absolutely love to do. Well, why do I do it this way? They do it this way, and maybe there's a better way or a different way that they're doing it. And that's part of it too. It's the understanding of why another culture may do things the way that they do. And that's part of that learning process. And all these things, we learn how we design our sense of travel. That's a learning experience. Then when we go there, we learn about that culture when we're there. And then when we come back, we're able to reflect because we're talking to our friends and our family, say, oh, by the way, they do it this way. And I saw this. And the excitement also is from the new knowledge that we have based on what we were able to see.
I know for traveling, it can be something that can help people build empathy and combat bias. I was wondering, because you have a lot of experience, if you've ha ever had something that was particularly humanizing about a place that you've traveled to.
Yeah, sure. I've had a number. I think one of the ones, the classic one that I use with my students is the time I was in Japan. And here in the States, just about every hotel that you go to, there's a iron and ironing board. And of course, I'm traveling and I've got my clothes in there. And of course, they're all wrinkled up. And I like my shirts to be well pressed as well as my
Hmm.
pants. And so I remember going into we had students with us and going to a hotel, and I asked them for an iron and ironing board, and the young lady at the desk at the front desk said, "Sorry, we don't have one." And I said, "Sorry, I don't think you're understanding." I said, "An iron and an ironing board." And she said, "I'm sorry, we don't have one." And I said, "Of course you do." And how arrogant of me to think
Hmm.
that just because I'm used to it and just where I go, that everybody else would have it. And so um, I said, "Can you get your manager?" Obviously, you're not hearing what I'm saying or understanding. And so the manager came and he said, "I'm so sorry, we don't." And it was really what was so enlightening was at that particular moment. I caught myself and I said, "What are you thinking?"
Hmm.
The first time she told you that they didn't have, it was very clear. It was English. She was able to articulate the fact that they didn't, and you just kept pressing and pressing because you wanted to really believe that they did, and they don't. And I apologized for how I was behaving, and here I'm thinking that I'm wise to understanding different cultures, and you can catch yourself. You can catch yourself in that environment. I've seen students order food and ask for French fries, and when the French fries come, they say, "Can I have mayonnaise?" And most places won't have mayonnaise. I mean, you should be happy if you can get ketchup, and and
Yeah.
and the ketchup is even remotely close to what you're used to. Uh, so again, and of course, if I hear them say that, I'll say, "No, they don't have mayonnaise here," and they can't understand that. So we have to be truly aware. Whereas other cultures that travel a lot, they don't fall into this problem because the more you travel, the more
Hmm.
you understand that they probably don't have what you want, but then you're pleasantly surprised if they do,
Hmm.
and that's what
Yeah,
happens.
it's kind of like you're building more of a understanding of outside of your normal everyday. So you don't fall into those traps of being like, well, doesn't everyone? And not realizing, whoa, there is a much larger perspective beyond that.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And that's what you get out of it. And that's the whole idea, isn't it, of exploration is to get more knowledge, is to have a greater understanding. And the more we understand different environments and different cultures, well, that also helps us, doesn't it? It helps us even in our own communities where we're often surrounded with people from different backgrounds, from different countries that are in our community. And so it increases our tolerance level to that and more understanding. And I think the more that we can do that, the better the environment and the community is. Good, good. Well, it's been a great half hour spending with you, Alicia. Always enjoy it. If you all out there certainly enjoyed the time too, go ahead and subscribe. Love to see you the next time we're here. All right.
Bye. It's a pleasure speaking with
It
you.
was great. It was great. All right. We'll see you next time. Bye. Thanks for hanging out with us today. We look forward to next week as we cover another cool and fun topic. This podcast was produced by Three Lions Production and sponsored by Con Consulting and Training. Until next time, keep it between the lines.